afternoon and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Muet CFR Aligned Webinar Part 2, organized by the Johor English Digital Learning Resources from the Johor State Education Department. I am Navinda Kaur from SMK Datuk Jaafar Johor Bahru, and joining me today are two very wonderful friends who are also very experienced Muet teachers. The first is Puan Sadia Sulaiman, the Senior Assistant for Form 6 from Maktab Sultan Abu Bakar, Johor Bahru. And she will share her views on the listening skills. The second is Puan Islin Nurakma binti Abdul Rahman from SMK Tasik Utara, Johor Bahru, who will speak on the reading skills. Welcome, ladies. Good to see you again. All right. Before we begin the webinar, I would like to inform everyone that certificates of attendance will be awarded through a Google Form link and a QR code at the end of the session. Also, please state your comments or questions in the chat column and the panel members will address them later. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us begin the Muet CEFR Aligned Webinar Part 2 by inviting Puan Sadia Sulaiman to share her views on the listening skills. Go ahead, Puan Sadia.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Dr. Navinda, our moderator for today's webinar. I'm Sadia Sulaiman from Maktab Sultan Abu Bakar, Johor Bahru. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here for a Muet session, Part 2 on listening and reading components, applying the new format that is aligned to CEFR. In today's webinar, I'll focus on the new format of listening test, that is 800/1, and my colleague Isli Nur Akmar will share the latest format on reading skills. First of all, I'll begin with the purpose of the listening test. Then, I'll talk about the differences between the 2008 format and the revised syllabus. And after that, we will look at the new structure, the listening test, and the task specification. And last but not least, I'll share some tips on listening test. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's, without further ado, let's look at the purpose of the listening test. The purpose of the listening test is to assess the ability of the candidates to understand spoken discourse in the higher education context, covering both monologues and dialogues. There are differences in the 2008 syllabus versus the revised syllabus of Muet. That is, first in terms of weighting. In 2008 syllabus, the weighting was 15% and the duration was only 30 minutes. The possible genres are lecture, briefing, talk, discussion, news, and etc. So candidates were given 20 questions and the question types were information transfer, short answer, and multiple choice questions with 3 options. Whereas the new structure of the revised listening test is different as compared to the 2008 syllabus. In terms of weighting, it has been increased from 15 to 25%. There is no such thing as listening component not as important as other components like writing and reading. In fact, all components, the 4 components, are equally important, and candidates should put equal effort and emphasis on the 4 components. The duration given for listening test is 50 minutes, as candidates have to attempt more questions in the new syllabus. Okay, that are 20 questions as compared to 2008 syllabus, which were only 20 questions. The possible text types in the latest syllabus are dialogues and monologues. And there will be 5 different parts in the new format. But in the old format, the 2008 syllabus, there were only 3 parts. So let's look at the new structure of the listening test. The first part of the listening test is part 1. Yeah. In this part 1, the new format is dialogue, which consists of 600 to 600 words, and the type of questions is multiple choice questions with 3 options each. Candidates are given 7 multiple choice questions, and the CEFR level is between A2 and B1. Next, part 2. It is a monologue which consists of 600 to 650 words. There will be multiple choice questions with 3 options, and candidates are given 7 questions, which the level of the question is between B1 and B2. So next part 3. Yeah, part 3 is a monologue spoken by 3 different speakers on the same topic. The length of the text is 350 to 400 words, and the question type is multiple matching with 5 given options. Candidates will be given 3 questions, and the CEFR level is B2. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to part 4. Part 4 is a dialogue which consists of 600 to 700 words, and the question type is multiple choice questions with 3 options. There will be 7 questions, and the CEFR level is B2. Last but not least, the last part is part 5. Part 5 is a short dialogue. There are 250 to 300 words per dialogue, and the question type is multiple choice questions with 3 options. Candidates are given 6 questions, and the CEFR level is between B2 and C1. Next, ladies and gentlemen, let's look at the task specification. So I'm going to focus on the task specification and will share with you the information on each part of the test. I'll give you some sample questions as well. And for your information, all the sample questions here are taken from MPM booklet entitled Sample Questions. There is a booklet given by MPM. So I use that booklet to take some sample questions from there. So for part 1, there will be text 1, and the items are 1 to 7. So candidates will be given 10 minutes to attempt the questions. Part 1 is easy to score compared to other parts because the CEFR level is between A2 and B1, and the vocabulary level is mostly B1 and below. So now, what about the test focus for part 1? The test focus is to identify general and specific information, to understand simple phrases and expressions, and to understand main ideas, made it clear standard speech on familiar matters. Let's look at the sample questions of part 1. So we have 7 questions here, all right? And the question is very simple and straightforward. And as you can see, part 1 has 7 questions, and the CEFR level, as I mentioned earlier, is between A2 and B1. Therefore, In this part, weak candidates by right should be able to score. Yeah, they should be able to do well and get marks on this part. Now let's move on to part 2, text 2. So the duration given is the same as in part 1, that is 10 minutes. But the CEFR level, it is higher, that is between B1 and B2. And the vocabulary level is mostly B2 and below, which is also higher than part 1, which means part 2 is more difficult than part 1. In terms of test focus, there would be some additional test focused in this part, okay, as compared to part 1. They are, first, to identify main ideas in linguistically complex speech, and second, to understand familiar and unfamiliar topics, and the next one is to follow extended speech and complex line of argument on reasonably familiar topics. So these are the additional test focus besides the previous ones in part 1, right? In order to know how part 2 questions look like, here are the samples of part 2 questions, right? So you can see from the slides there, we have questions 8 to 14. In this part 2, weak candidates are expected to get some marks, whereas good candidates and mediocre should be able to do well in this part. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, let's move on. Okay, now we look at part 3. So part 3, yeah. So part 3, the duration given is 6 minutes, yeah, which is shorter than part 1 and part 2. Okay, and the CEFR level is B2. The vocabulary level is mostly B2 and below. Each item may test some of the following skills, such as understanding ideas in linguistically complex speech, understanding familiar and unfamiliar topics, following extended speech and complex lines of arguments, right? And on reasonably familiar and unfamiliar topics. And here are the samples of this part. So for part 3, basically, you can see here from the slides, candidates will be given 3 questions, okay, that are questions 15, 16, and 17. And candidates are to listen to 3 different speakers talking about the same topic. The speakers are named and their roles are specified. So these are all about part 3. So now let's move on to part 4, text 4. So the duration is approximately 10 minutes, right? And the CEFR level is B2. The vocabulary level for this part is mostly B2 and below. They are the skills that may be tested in part 4. So this is about the test focus here. So the first one is understanding main ideas in linguistically complex speech. Second, understanding familiar and unfamiliar topics. And third, following extended speech and complex line of argument on reasonably familiar topics. All right, so this is the sample of questions for part 4. And as you can see, part 4 has 7 questions that are questions 18 to 24. Right? So now let's look at the last part, part 5. Part 5 will be based on 3 related dialogues, each of which is followed by two multiple choice questions. And each multiple choice question has three options. The duration given is approximately 3 minutes, and the CEFR level is between B2 and C1. So this is the highest level compared to other parts, and the vocabulary level is mostly C1 and below. So here are the test focus. So each item may test some of the following skills, which are: first, understanding main ideas in linguistically complex speech. Second, understanding familiar and unfamiliar topics. All right. Third, following extended speech and complex lines of arguments on reasonably familiar topics. And then following extended speech on abstract and complex topics outside field of study and confirming occasional details. And one more is following less structured implied messages in extended speech. The next one is understanding idiomatic expressions, colloquialism, and variation in language use. So these are all the test focus for part 5. So therefore, part 5 is the toughest of all. And the CEFR level, as I have mentioned earlier, is between B2 and C1. And you can see these are the sample questions for part 5. Right? And there are text 5 to 7 in part 5, and candidates are given 6 questions. Right? So questions 25 to 30. The questions will be based on the dialogue given. For example, dialogue 1, questions 25 and 26. Dialogue 2, questions 27 and 28. Dialogue 3, questions 29 and 30. The three texts should be of approximately similar length, right? So that's basically about part 5. Now I'm going to share some tips on listening, right? So in order to score well in the listening test, firstly, make sure candidates read the questions before listening to the recording. Secondly, listen attentively to the recording twice. Then focus on the questions. And last but not least, listen and recheck your answers during the second recording. So those are only tips for you to try. So I would like to give some suggestions for teachers, right? When dealing with a listening practice with your students, what you can do is you can help them by doing the brainstorming session. So brainstorm the topic given so that they have some ideas or background knowledge. And then there are some suggested topics that you can brainstorm with your students. So, for example, topics that are related to academic and educational environment. So besides that, you can also brainstorm certain topics on people and culture, financial awareness and consumerism, science and technology, health, and also environment. So those are some of the topics that you can brainstorm with your students during your listening session. So when attempting the listening test, remind your students to maintain their concentration while listening. Yeah, because 50 minutes of listening test is quite long. It's quite long compared to the previous one, to the previous format, which was only 30 minutes. So the next one, you can also remind your students to concentrate well while listening, yeah, and make sure they choose the correct answer, because we know that candidates are given multiple choice questions in their listening, but doesn't mean that they are easy to score. The distractors are very challenging too. So concentrate and focus on the questions and don't take things for granted. Well, the next suggestion for teachers, when teaching listening, I suggest that you teach part by part so that your students won't be so stressful. Let them digest well. Yeah. And towards the end, you can let your students to practice the whole part to get the real experience of how easy or difficult the questions are in each part, right? So we know that the beginning part is easy, but it will be more and more difficult towards the end. So remind them to concentrate more, especially on the difficult parts, and maintain uh, their concentration till the end of the session. So, ladies and gentlemen, before I end my session, I would like to share with you some links, yeah, e-links, so that you can use that as a practice. There are lots of other resources that you can use. For instance, you can search listening materials in the internet as well. So here are some of the e-links for you. Hopefully, this can help you when you do exercises with your students. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all for now. But we have another session after this. So please stay tuned. And with that, I hand over to you, our moderator, Dr. Navinder, and thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Pon Sadia. That was indeed very interesting. All right, to get your experience. All right, welcome, friends. We have a lot of teachers from all over Malaysia. So we have friends from Kedah, Sabah, Sarawak, Selangor, and of course, Johor Bahru itself. So thank you very much for joining us. All right, before I move on to the second speaker, perhaps Pon Sadia, is it all right if I ask you a question?
All right.
Okay, all right. I was wondering now that practically all of us are having the PDPR from home, right? What is your
Okay.
advice on how do we go about to encourage listening, to encourage online listening with our students? What are your views on that?
Thank you, Dr. Navin. I think in order to encourage our students to do listening practice, first you can share links, okay, links for listening practice, and they can use that as their own practice at home. Yeah, it means exercise should be done continuously. Okay, even though it's MCO. Yeah, and we still have lots of materials out there that you can find. Yeah, you can just browse through the internet to get some materials for listening practice, and you can also conduct your lesson via Google Meet. Yeah, let them listen to the recording and conduct your lesson as usual. It will do. Yeah, we have tried that. As usual, when you conduct, you can start off your lesson by doing pre-listening activities. For example, brainstorming session on the topic that you are going to teach. And then you can move on to listening activities by doing it part by part. Yeah. So I think that's all I could suggest. Hopefully, it gives you some ideas.
Yes, thank you, Ponsadia. That is, yes, I think I will practice some of the ideas that you have put forward. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to the second part of our webinar today. And with us is Puan Islin. Nurakma from SMK Tasik Utara. Puan Islin will be speaking on the reading skills. Over to you, Puan Islin.
Right. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And hello, everyone. Welcome to the Muet CFR Align webinar for today. I am Izlin Nur Akma binti Abdurrahman from SMK Tasik Utara. And I will be focusing on the reading skill, okay, of the Muet CFR Align. Okay, let's have a look at the general outline of what I would like to present today. Okay, for the first part, I would like to look at the differences in the Muet 2008, the previous syllabus, versus the syllabus that we're looking at now, the Muet 2020. And also the next part would be the test specifications for the Muet reading, where I will also look at the text length for the reading tasks, the question types, and also the subskills. Okay, and then moving on from that, we'll look at the sample reading questions, and also the last part would be the implications for the teaching and the learning of the Muet reading. So I hope that will be useful for the teachers and also the students. Okay, let's start. So we are looking at the Muet reading test specifications. Let's look at the next slide. Yeah. Where the features include the duration, the number of questions, the type of questions, the number of texts, and also the CFR level. Okay, so let's look at the next, the first Muet 2008, which includes the weighting. Yeah, can we have a look at the slide? Yeah, thank you. The weighting would be 40%. Yeah, of it. If you look at the new format, it's only 25%. So as Puan Sadia mentioned just now, it is all equal now. So all the papers are 25% each. So there's no, one paper favoring compared to the other papers. So the last time, yes, it was reading. Reading was, the bulk of it, the bulk of the percentage of the weighting. But now it's all equal. So we had 90 minutes before, but now we only have 75 minutes. The questions are also a bit less, only 40 compared to 45. And the type of questions are still multiple choice questions, but in the previous syllabus, we had the true false not stated. If you remember, it was quite challenging for some students. Yeah, and then we have the number of texts. For the new syllabus would be 7 texts, yeah, compared to the 6 texts given in the previous one. And the CEFR level, now it ranges from A2 to C1, so that it can be accessible for all the learners of English, starting from the relatively easy to the more challenging, questions, yeah? Okay, let's have a look at the next part. The factors affecting the task difficulty, where I just mentioned that from A2 to C1, the questions vary, okay, and it gets progressively difficult, okay. So the A2 level, the texts are shorter or short, with familiar topics for the students. It is informal in the text type, yeah, and the language used is much simpler and focuses on the factual aspects, yeah. In comparison with the C1, towards the end of the test, it is longer, lengthy. The topics might be unfamiliar to some students, or they may not be so unfamiliar, but they might not be of interest to the students because it's more dense and academic. It's formal, yeah, the text types are formal, using more complex language, and the focus is on perspectives rather than facts, yeah. So we can see that the levels begin with A2, actually not A1, yeah, A2 to C1, okay. So I think the candidates have equal chance to try it out and everyone can at least answer at least the beginning part. Yeah, the C1 part probably is a challenge for many students. Yeah. Okay, it doesn't matter. We'll have a look. Yeah. Okay, we are going to look at the test specifications for reading. Yeah. There are in total 7 parts. Okay, beginning with part 1. The level for CFR is A2, the lowest level. It has 3 short texts, which is the same type, and it is about the same theme, amounting to 100 to 150 words, which is relatively short. Yeah, it is multiple matching, the type of question given, where the 3 texts are preceded by 4 multiple matching questions. So there are a total of 4 questions or 4 items given. Okay, for part 2 and part 3, the next one, the level is B1. Okay, where there are 2 texts, each of 300 to 450 words, and the questions are multiple choice for 3 options and a total of 10 questions. Okay, and then we have part 4. Moving on to the next CFR level, which is B2. This part is a bit different, where you have 2 independent texts, but based on the same theme. So the story is, the theme is actually the same, but it's not necessarily the same text type. Okay, it amounts to a total of 700 to 800 words, all MCQs, and 2 questions for each text. Text 1, text 2, and also the last part is actually comparing the 2 texts. So this will be very interesting in terms of how the students can study 2 texts and compare it, together. All right. Okay, let's move on to part 5. Okay, part 5, we have still B2 level. Okay, and this is also interesting because there is one long text of 500 to 600 words, and it is gapped. Okay, the text is gapped with 6 missing sentences, but there are 7 options given. So there are 6 lines or 6 missing gaps or sentences that we need to choose from the 7 options. And this is quite of a challenge, okay, even for the teachers. Yeah, but I think there is a way or strategy that you can use to overcome this. Okay, and then we have part 6 and 7, which is the same, C1 level. And this is very similar to the previous syllabus in 2008, where there are 2 texts of 700 to 900 words, which is the longest number of words so far. And the MCQs, there are 4 options. Yeah, and this usually has specialized articles. It is longer, it is more technical. It can also be in a complex factual and literary text form. So the styles, there's a variety of styles in this part. Okay, all right. Let's have a look at the next section, which is the reading subskills. Yeah. Okay. So for the reading subskills, we have. I want to focus on the key reading subskills. If you look at the 3rd column, okay, for the teachers, they might be interested in looking at this because this will help them prepare the materials. Okay, so for part 1, we have 3 short texts. Yeah, if you look at the booklet that NPM has provided you with, this one, if you have, yeah, this one. Okay, it has 3 short texts, and it's actually a notice, house for rent. Okay, so it's just a matter of matching. Yeah, for part 2 and part 3, you have the subskills of inferencing. Yeah, this is also quite challenging to teach. Identifying details and examples from sources to support an argument. Okay, and then the next one would be identifying the main ideas and supporting details, and also predicting outcomes for the last subskill. So part 2, given was an email from a lecturer to a student, so semi-formal or formal actually. And then part 3 is actually an extract from a novel. So this is like a story that the students may read and may enjoy actually. Okay, so this is probably something that the students will still be able to focus on in the earlier parts of the question. Okay, and then we move on to part 4. where the reading sub-skills become more difficult. Yeah, they need to distinguish the facts and the opinions of the writer. They also need to interpret the text for the author's intentions, attitudes, and style. Also transferring information from linear to non-linear text. The next one is categorizing similarities and differences across text. And this is a very good example of part 4, where we have the 2 independent texts that I mentioned before. The language is the CFR level is B2, where there are 2 parts thematically linked, but it's given so that you can compare and contrast. Yeah, and the last part is the evaluation of the information given in the different texts. Okay, so this is getting more challenging, where the level is B2. Okay, all right. Moving on to the next part, which is part 5. Okay, part 5, the one that I mentioned where it has a gap, yeah, the gap text, yeah. You need to identify the purpose of the paragraph of the text, yeah. Recognize also the text structure of the whole text, yeah, whether it is cause and effect or, the reasons, okay. And also identifying the, as I mentioned just now, cause and effect relationships in the text. Yeah, so this needs to be looked at as a whole. Yeah, okay. Part 6 and part 7, recognizing the text contents, the features, the details, the emotions, the opinions, and the attitudes of the writer. We need to know what the writer is, wants to convey to the readers, and also to recognize, excuse me, the text organization, the features. For example, they compare and they refer to some things in the text itself. Yeah, so those are the sub skills that teachers might want to look at before they start teaching the various texts for the Muet reading. Yeah, okay. So now we are going to look at the sample questions. Yeah. The sample questions from the selected parts of the reading paper. I'm not going to show the 7 parts. Yeah, I'm just going to take three things, which is the part 2, the text with the 3 option answers. Part 4, which is there are 2 texts given, and also part 5, the gap text. Yeah, so the middle part where I think most students would be able to try and attempt and get it correct. Yeah, okay. If some of you are wondering, yeah, the sample questions here actually are scanned, okay, from the session 1, sesi 1 2021 reading paper. Yeah, so I only took the questions because I think the question is important to look at before you look at the text. Yeah, sometimes the text, you don't need to look at the whole text, but the question will tell you what to look at. So you need to study the questions before reading the text. That will be my advice, yeah, to start off the lesson. Yeah, why do we need to read the questions? Because we need to anticipate what the text is about. So when we read the questions, we will know what the text is about, and we can bring in our background knowledge to the text, to our reading. Yeah, the next one is we need to read the questions because we want to identify which part of the text to focus more on. Is it paragraph 1 or paragraph 2, or is it later in paragraph 3? Yeah, and then the next reason why is to make it easier for us to understand the text. Yeah, so when we read the questions, we know what the text is about, and it makes us more comfortable to read the text and understand it well. And the last thing that I think is important is to identify the answers quickly when we read it for the first time. So we know, oh, this is the answer to that question that I read just now. So it's faster. Okay. So for part 2, when you read the questions first, it's faster for you to look at to find the answers quickly. Okay. Now we are looking at questions from part 4 now. Okay. So this is text 1. From text 1, you have 2 questions. Here it writes, the writer believes that. So question 15 here is actually asking the reader to understand the writer's viewpoint. So what is the writer's viewpoint or opinion on this certain issue that he has raised? Yeah. And question 16, people from Asian countries and then you have the options there. It requires the readers to evaluate the information given. So the processes are all, happening while you're reading it, and it's actually an active process rather than very passive. Yeah. Okay, so this is part 4, text 1. We look at part 4, text 2. Okay, we have 2 questions as well. For question 17, okay, the readers need to distinguish facts and opinions. So which are facts, which are opinions, and the question will ask, yeah? And then question 18, actually the readers need to interpret the author's intention. So you see that it's not a straightforward question, okay? They need to interpret, and that, uses a lot of thought processes, yeah? Okay, and for questions from part 4 for text 1 and 2, okay, this is a combination. You need to refer to text 1 and text 2. For question 19 given, the readers need to categorize the similarities. So what are the similarities between the 2 texts? And they need to, come up with the answer for question 19. For question 20, the readers need to compare and evaluate information in the 2 texts. Again, this is something that they, need to be able to look at it quickly for the text 1 and text 2. Yeah. Okay. So now we are going to look at the last one, which is part 5. Yeah. Questions from part 5. It is a long text. Yeah. But I only took 2 gap. The 2 questions which are gapped is 21 and 22. Yeah. The skills that you need in order to answer this part is recognize the structure of the whole text, whether the text, is talking about a certain issue or a few issues, or is it a cause and effect, issue. And then the next skill would be also to identify the relationship between, certain things in the text, where here it is the cause and effect. Okay, so this is something that is very common in this type of text. And I think that some students are quite familiar with this format, especially in the, secondary years in Form 4, Form 5 probably. Yeah. I also put down there anaphoric and cataphoric references in order for teachers to try and teach your students. Yeah. Anaphoric refers to the previously mentioned subject, and then cataphoric will be the after, okay, the references after given. And sometimes the use of the pronouns is important. He, which, when they say they, what is the author trying to refer to? They, it. So the pronouns as given in the text to fill in the gap will be very important. Yeah. So I hope you can look up the phrase anaphoric and cataphoric reference and see how that can help you with this. Also, I would like to mention that sometimes in a paragraph there are topic sentences, right? And then we have thesis statements. So that will be very clear. If it's in the beginning part, then you know that it will be a topic sentence, and the topic sentence will mention this, and then it'll be easier for you to answer the gaps. Yeah. Okay. Okay, now I move on to the implications for the teaching and learning. I'd like you to try and see whether you can put this information to practical use. I've listed some reading strategies, but these are just a few that I need to highlight. I want to highlight because there are so many more reading strategies that I think many teachers use, but these are the things that I just want to share with you probably, and maybe we are the same, on the same wavelength. Okay, the first reading strategy would be answering questions. The second one would be the thinking about thinking, and the third one is the graphic or semantic organizers. Okay, so let's look at the answering of questions. Yeah, the first reading strategy. Okay, I think this is a very well established way of teaching comprehension. Okay, because we provide questions for the students, because they can be very effective, because they give students a purpose for reading. Students go into their reading with a purpose and not simply just read it because the teachers ask them to read. So they read it because there is something that we want from them to get from the text. And also, when we give questions, it focuses the students' attention on what they are to learn. So what are they going to learn? This is what we have already given from the questions. So they can answer the questions and know what the focus is. Okay, the third is we need to help the students to think actively as they read. So it's not just a matter of finding the answers for the questions, but they need to have some kind of thought processes. Think actively rather than passively looking at the text and just reading it without understanding. The next reason why is to encourage students to monitor their comprehension, whether they understand it or not. Whether they know that this means this means that. So they need to be able to monitor their understanding of the text. And lastly, the questions actually help the students to review the content and relate to what they have learned, so they can bring in what their background knowledge of what they know into the text, so that it's easier for them to understand. Okay, so this is the first reading strategy. The second one is thinking about thinking. Okay, if you're wondering what this means, it's actually metacognition. Some teachers do this. Check the understanding of the text. How you need to focus the students thinking about what they are thinking. So they need to identify what it is that they do not understand, because they need to, I mentioned just now, to monitor their understanding. So what is it that they don't understand? And then they can identify where the problem is. When I say where, it means that they could have problems with this paragraph 2, this line 47. Okay, so then they can focus more on that. So you need to think where the problem is for them when reading the text. And then the next one would be, it would be very useful if the students can rephrase difficult sentences or using their own words. For me, when I read text, I would, write down, rewrite what I understand what the text is about on the side of the text. Probably this could be something that you want to encourage your students to do. The next one is to look back through the text to check the information, whether the information supports your understanding. So you need to check back previous paragraph, previous page, to make sure that you understand the text, or the students can understand the text. And also to look forward. The next point is to look forward in the text for more information. So that the teachers can probably help the readers to look to go through the process of pre-reading, during reading, and also the post-reading activities. These are some things that you might want to consider when you give your students a reading comprehension. Okay, let's look at the third reading strategy, which is using graphic or semantic organizers. For me, I think that the use of maps is important or is helpful for the readers. Using, I think, maps. I think Malaysian teachers are very familiar with this, but I have only 4 types of maps here, but there will be, the rest that you can choose from. But I think these 4 are interesting or important for the language teachers to use. Bubble map, double bubble map, the multi-flow map, and also the bridge map. Okay, so let's have a look at the first bubble map. Okay, the bubble map, if you can see here, is actually used to describe a certain issue. Here it talks about transport by air. Okay, so if you look at the the bubbles that appear around transport by air, it is actually adjectives that describe transport by air: comfortable, expensive, modern, reliable, efficient, fast. So if they can look at a text, and then the text is about one issue, and then they can use adjectives to describe about that issue, it would probably make them easier to understand the issue better, the text better, I mean. Yeah. It is listing down the adjectives, yeah, for the bubble map. And I would like to say that it is also useful for writing skills. Yeah. Okay, for the double bubble map, yeah, if you look here, there are two things that we want to compare. Yeah, here it is the aeroplane and also the vehicle, which is a car. And then we have the similarities in the middle. The passengers will be the similarities and also require gas or actually require petrol. Yeah. And the other bubbles are actually the differences. So this particular double bubble map is actually comparing the different information that you have. Remember the part 4 where you have the two texts. Yeah, you can probably use this double bubble map to look at the differences and the similarities between the two texts that are given. So it'll make the students understand it clearer. Okay, it's actually a visual stimulus for the students. Instead of just talking about it, you can have it in writing, and this is in the form of a bubble map or double bubble map. Okay, we move on to the next map, which is a multi-flow map, giving you the cause and effect. Yeah, this is sometimes used, or most of the time used, in academic texts. Yeah, where here the example given is go to university as the issue given, and the causes, why the students go to university. The causes are good grades, hard work and studying. And then the effect of that would be, if when you go to university, you'll get a degree, your knowledge, and also a job or a career. So this is more for the academic text, and very dense text, and it separates the causes and the effects, and you can have a discussion with your students in the class, yeah, to see whether you have the same causes and the effects. Yeah. Okay, and I will move on to the last part of the reading strategy, which is the graphic bridge map. Yeah. Okay, for the bridge map, it actually provides a visual image to ease understanding of the thinking skills, where it shows analogies of different things. If you look at the first example given, is the plural, yeah, plural form. So men is the plural of man, as teeth is the plural of tooth. So the relating factor here is the plural of. Yeah. So the students can see different items, but as a whole, they see it as all these things are different, but the relating factor between the different things are actually it's plural. Yeah. I think that in language classes, usually bridge maps can be used to explain or visualize metaphors. Yeah, some texts use metaphors, so it can be used to show this clearly, to show analogies. Yeah, the second example, the sound system, yeah, has the same sound. So higher has the same sound as higher, Higher and HIRE. So these are the things that probably you want to show, or you want to make the students use, to get used to these different visuals, so that it can ease their understanding of the text. Yeah. Okay, so let's have a look at the last slide, which in short, to summarize, this new format, this new Muet format, has equal weighting of all the 4 skills. Yeah, the listening, the speaking, the reading, and the writing all are 25%. So they are equally important. Yeah, so they cannot score on only reading. I mean, previously, yes, if you score reading, then you'll get a better band, but not for the new format. So I think it's actually very fair for all the skills. Yeah, the 4 skills need to be equally mastered by learners. Yeah, so it's not just one particular skill that you need to master, but this is all to be a proficient language English user. Yeah, the sub skills that I mentioned just now are familiar to some learners, or maybe all learners, especially in the mainstream upper secondary form, from form 3 to form 5, I think. Yeah, I'm not so familiar with this, but I think I was told that, yeah, the part 5, where you have that long text and gap text, is very similar to that, only that in Muet it'll be a bit, more technical and a bit challenging. Yeah, so the same thing goes when you are teaching and when you're answering. So the students should not feel that it is something new. So they shouldn't fear it actually. Yeah, they can, yeah, please give motivation for them to try and get it correct. Yeah. It is still manageable. I mean, the new format is still manageable for all the students to target a higher overall band because of the equal weightage. Yeah, so it's not a problem to target a higher band for students, and don't just be complacent with a band 3. Yeah, that would be my advice. And finally, practice. Practice makes perfect. With any skill, like football, you need to practice. So with reading, also you need to practice reading, writing, speaking, and listening. So the more you practice, the more you will get better, inshallah. Yeah. So so I think that is all that I would like to present for my session, or in for reading, and I hope that it will be useful to everyone, teachers and students alike. Yeah. So thank you very much for listening, and I hand it over to Dr. Naveen.
All right. Thank you very much, Ponislin. It was very good to hear your ideas on the reading skills. All right. Ponislin, there are two questions. The first question, right, is from Drew Chan, Mr. Drew Chan. And
Okay.
his question is, will there still be a band 6, or has it been replaced by band 5 plus?
For reading, it is actually a 5 plus. Yeah. There will be no longer be band 6, but it is called a band 5 plus. Yeah. Very short answer from me. It's a band 5 plus actually. If you
All
look
right.
at, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. There's another question, Ponislin, is from Guy Baboy. I hope I pronounced the name correctly. All right. And the question is, do you have any tips on how we can prepare our students to tackle part 5?
Okay, yeah. Part 5 is the one where we had the, a long chunk of text, yeah, where there are gaps, 6 gaps there. One of the things that you need to talk or tell your students to do first is to look at it as a whole, yeah. They need to understand the text as a whole in order for them to answer the different parts, or the to fill in the gaps, yeah, the 6 gaps there. The key lies in what does the previous sentence of the gap refer to, or if you cannot find the clues, you look at the sentence after. Yeah, that's what I meant by anaphoric and cataphoric reference. Yeah, so you need to look at what is the issue they're talking about, or what is in detail specifically they're referring to, and then you see the options given, 7, and if they relate to that, then probably you will need to choose the right one, and then you can simply single out that. That would be how probably you can, I mean, it sounds easy, but actually it requires a lot of thinking in terms of is it here refers to it, the same issue, or is the pronoun they referring to this group of people or another group of people? So you need to be able to show that to the students, because some students they simply jumble up their pronouns, and he becomes she, and they, and they don't actually they are not clear about what the subject of the sentence or the text is. Yeah, so probably you want to teach them the subject, the object, in between, and then tell them that these are actually clues to help you fill in the blanks. Yeah, to answer the questions. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's clear. I think it's very important for us to know the content of the passage that we are doing.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much, Ponislin. Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the webinar. Thank you very much for joining us today. Our heartfelt appreciation to Puan Sadia and Ponislin for joining us today for the Muet CFR Aligned webinar part 2. Ladies, you can enjoy your holidays now. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, please do like and subscribe the JEDLR YouTube channel and do visit the JEDLR website for more worksheets. For your information, the part 1 of the JEDLR Muet session was on 9th of May and you can find the recordings on the channel. Also, please don't forget to click on the Google link for your certificates or scan the QR code that will be given shortly. Alright, so I would like to take this opportunity to thank the pengarah from Jabatan Pendidikan Negeri Johor and also Sektor Pembelajaran Jabatan Pendidikan Negeri Johor for their support and guidance. So happy holidays everybody. Remember to stay safe. Alright, thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.